Well, hello, and welcome to yet another riveting podcast of My Dog Will Eat My Face. First off, I have to do a little house cleaning here because I did hear from some kind listeners that the last podcast had some bizarro technical issues to where there would be a long pause and then the last word of my previous segment would somehow superimpose over the first word of the subsequent segment. So I don't know if that was all universal. I tried to reproduce it on my side in the application that I have, and it didn't appear as an issue. So I'm not sure exactly what the cause was, except I did use a new AI tool that allows it to automatically segmentize your podcast and break it out for you, as opposed to you doing it manually, ergo saving time on editing. So it was the first time I used this happy little tool, and I therefore think that particular issue was caused by that. And it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to abandon it, but it means that there's something else that it's doing that I'm not fully familiar with to rectify. Anyway, so as I said, as I move to this new technical platform, it's going to be a perilous journey with some injury and despair amongst all of us as I try to clunk my way through this new interface that I was forced upon, and I just frankly despise the new interface. But that's not your problem. That's my problem. So I apologize. Hopefully, this podcast is better without those particular technical issues. But if you hear anything technical or that's weird, like I just described, please, 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 please promptly tell me as best as you can. Because I need to know. Because it means that there's something that is showing up on someone else's side that is not showing up on my side, and I need to somehow discern why. So that's very important. So just let me know. I'm not going to be embarrassed. Oh, well, actually, I lied. I will be embarrassed, but it's really the only way to work through it. So if you hear a technical weird event, let me know. All right, so with that housekeeping out of the way and moving forward, last week I spoke about narcissistic trauma and how, through some random chance, I was informed of the various uh, indicators, if you will, of suffering from narcissistic trauma. And unfortunately for me, I checked off each sign that you may indeed suffer from that. And I was rather stuck on what to do about it. Because I think I know exactly where that's coming from, as I spoke about last week. And I did set that small goal, which is to talk to a counselor about this issue through being made aware of it, because I'm just frankly sick and tired of it. Well, the good news, my dear friends, is I accomplished my goal. I did talk to a counselor about it. And of course, then there was many cheers heard throughout the stadium. Remember, when you're setting goals for yourself, don't try to create grandiose objectives with nothing in between, because you will set yourself up for failure, but rather set yourself up with small baby steps that are achievable so you can incrementally move forward to where you want to be in your sense of self or in your happiness. And this was a perfect example of that. I set my goal very small, very achievable, and I happily achieved it. And it actually revealed some very interesting observations that both me and my counselor made. And today I really want to talk about those, share those with you, talk through them, and see if there's anywhere to go next with this. Because at this juncture, I'm a little stuck. But perhaps talking it out will lead me to the end goal that I desire. So, that is my goal for today. And before I close this happy little introduction, keep in mind that is the other aspect of terminal illness, that is having one, that people don't usually get. Yes, I am suffering physically from a terminal illness, and I'm in home hospice care. All true. But that does not make me immune to all the other troubles in life that might occur. I still have to solve my own issues. I still have to figure out how to mitigate past trauma. I still have to pay taxes. And that's a big surprise, I think, to me, and it might be to some other people that face similar challenge is that all those little things don't stop. They keep coming at you, and you can't ignore them. Otherwise, your last days of your life are going to be even more miserable. So keep that in mind. If you know somebody who's dealing with something heavy like heart failure, cancer, they also have all the everyday things that a normal person would have. And they could be somebody like me who's single and lives alone and has not much support from family. I mean, I do have support from the family that I love for sure, but it's not like I'm living with them or something like that. It's just something to keep in mind. If you come across someone in this situation and you might feel helpless to assist them with the foreboding circumstance that they face, maybe the best help is to help them in their day to day things, their simple things in life, to make them free to deal with the larger things that they're faced with. Maybe just going to the grocery store for them and checking that little thing off their to do list because they don't want to starve to death and have cancer. That just might be enough to give them the time to deal with the other more severe issue. So I just want to point that out as some food for thought for listeners who know somebody who's going through something similar to this. And if you feel helpless, like you can't help them with such a daunting issue, the answer may very well be extraordinarily obvious, to where you could just help them with the day to day things that everyone might experience. So keep that in mind. That was for sure that was for sure an unwelcome discovery I made when I entered on this journey. So, just some food for thought. So, as I stated in my last podcast, I really ventured into my vexation with my previous employment. That is at least in how it ended. I felt very wrong by my very last supervisor, even though I merely had to endure her for, golly, 3 months. It was brutal and a very hostile work environment. And so many years later, I am still lamenting those events. I'm still viscerally angry about those events. And I am very sick of being in such a state. So I expressed all this as I did last week, I suppose, to my listeners, to my counselor. I did reach out, as I said, and scheduled an appointment. And I indicated that I know this is something that was completely out of my control. I was not dismissed for, you know, cause of action. Let's say I wasn't fired. And it was just an event that I absolutely had no say in. I did not run out my FMLA protection when I went into the hospital with sepsis. I did not eliminate my position because I ran out of FMLA when I was battling for my life with septic shock. And I know very well that the 20 plus years before that, I did my job very well through multiple employers. So I eventually said at one point to my counselor, this is an event of which I have no control over whatsoever. And I cognitively understand that it is foolish and useless to lament something that is entirely out of my control. As Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. There are many outside events that occur that are no cause of our own. And to worry about it, possibly worrying about it occurring, or to lament that it did occur, as I have been, is cognitively entirely useless and just introduces discord into your mind with no chance of overcoming something that which you had no control over. If it were something that I had caused, I at least could say, oh, well, I know not to do that again. If I decided to show up to the office one day completely snickered drunk or something, I don't know, and got fired as a result, I sure would hope I'd realize I better not do that again because that was my fault. And you can think of any multitude of things, some silly, some not, of things you could do that are absolutely your fault that would result in ill fate. But at least those things are things that you do control and can cease or alter and take steps to mitigate or ensure they don't even ever occur again. And that's where you can draw a lot of comfort, even though it was a bad event. It might have been traumatic. You can draw peace and comfort from knowing that this is something you can control and change or mitigate. And I hope and possibly even expect better results in the future. Now, I cognitively can say that. And I'm reminded then of the valedictorian speech at my high school graduation. I'm actually not making this up. In my high school graduation, the valedictorian, gives a little spiel. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Is it valedictorian? Is it valid Victorian? I don't know. I'm gonna have to look that up. Um, this person, that's what they're gonna call her, was giving her speech to the rest of us, the graduating class. And one of the things she said really stuck with me, and I recall it verbatim to this day, many decades later. She said that worrying about a problem is sort of like trying to solve an algebra problem by chewing gum. It just doesn't work. Worry is a completely useless state to be in. You could anticipate potential problems. You could foretell an ill fortune at some point because of what's happening now. And then you can hopefully take actions to mitigate the impact of whatever that is, or even eliminate it altogether. But just to sit there and to worry does absolutely nothing to make it go away or to make it better or less harmful to you as a person. And since this was an event that was entirely out of my control, I need to wash my hands of it and drop kick it to the curb. Because that woman, that former supervisor, is now living in my head for free, and I need to evict her post haste. Now, see, I can come to that perfectly logical cognitive conclusion. And some of you may be like, hey, there you go. You already know the answer. And yet, the knee jerk emotional impulse of vexation over those events still occurs. The problem is yes, my prefrontal lobe can say, hey, this was out of my control, and thinking about it or worrying about it, and it's completely useless. So I should not even bother to do that anymore, but rather instead focus on more productive things in my life. But then, meanwhile, deep down in my, I don't know, my evolutionary reptilian brain, buried deep somewhere in the Abdullah Amulgada, is saying, no, I am still knee jerking an emotional response to that event because it still is unpleasant. And that little reptilian part of my brain is saying, I've been here for a much longer time than you, frontal lobe, so screw you. So I run with the emotional response. Of course, I don't really believe the parts of my brain are their own agency and argue with one another. I hope none of you think I'm serious. Um, that just creates a humorous illusion as to what my problem is. I can cognitively say the truth. It's a logical, simple truth that there is nothing I had to do or could have done to avert what happened to me. And it is entirely useless to maintain that adversity in my life. And yet, 3 a.m. rolls around, maybe, or 4 a.m., and I can't sleep, and that gut emotional knee jerk response just kicks and punts me right back to square one where I get angry about it. And I don't know then what to do about that exactly. Because even though comical, it is true. Our frontal lobes are rather recent additions to our magnificent ape brains. But there are millions of years of evolution before that of primal emotion and anger and knee jerk reaction that existed long before our prefrontal lobe, our cognitive abilities really begin to emerge. And they still can easily command us and push us into circumstances of our own making that we do not want. And that is what is happening to me. And I don't think it's in any sense a rarity. I'm sure this kind of thing happens to people all the time. I'm sure many of you can think of a time when you cognitively knew you shouldn't be upset, but you were anyway. And it is frustrating, isn't it? It really is. So, for me, I've got to somehow get past this. And that is the junction where I'm currently at, and shall I say, stuck. I even asked point blank my counselor in person, face to face, what do you think I should do? She said, I don't know. She's she said, I thought you put it perfectly, but I don't know how to get from A to B. So that's sort of where I'm at. But I do know the one thing I shouldn't do is nothing. I shouldn't just throw my arms up in the air and say, oh, well, I can't fix it. I'm not going to bother. I'm going to be angry until the day I die. I mean, I could do that, absolutely. That is by far the path of least resistance. I could do that 8 a.m. tomorrow. But I don't want to. And yes, I am in the end stages of congestive heart failure. And tomorrow may very well be my last day. But I don't want to spend it pissed off over something that's totally out of my control. And I think to anyone that makes ample sense. So let me take stock of where I'm at. I can cognitively describe the problem with my perception and realize that it is a problem with no terminus. There's no way to get around it because it is something out of my control. And I can also state that it's a condition in which I no longer wish to experience in my life, no matter how long it may be. A couple days, a couple years, whatever. I don't want to deal with this anymore. As I said, this person is living free in my headspace, and I need to get that eviction rolling. The place where I stop is I don't know how to convert that cognitive conclusion into an actionable event that will stop my gut emotional twitch in the recesses of my mind. However, I do know one thing more. Actually, I do know that there is one thing that will ensure that will keep happening, much to my dismay, and that is by doing absolutely nothing. If I throw my arms up in the air and say, well, I can't fight it, it's human nature. I don't have a choice. Oh well, that will absolutely ensure the continuance of the condition I do not want. So, with all that knowledge, what can I do? Remember, baby steps. Let's do baby steps. Something attainable to get past this visceral reaction. At the front of it, or I should say, initially, my answer is I have no idea. Except I can do one thing. I can remind myself of that cognitive dissidence that clearly states my thought pattern is wrong. That is the thought pattern of being in the grasp of this event still. At the very least, I can completely remind myself the words I've already said here in this podcast. Again, that is, this was an event that was completely out of my control. I had no say in it and no way to even mitigate it, let alone defer it. So, shut up. Stop worrying. That is something I can at least try to do. If it takes writing it down, so be it. If it takes saying it out loud, so be it. My dog might think I'm crazy, but he probably already does. So, who's counting? Oh, the fun part, though, would be when I say it like in an elevator filled with people, where I'm mumbling to myself, make them all nervous. So, hey, that might be a little fun, a little, enjoyment on the side there that I was not anticipating. So at this point, that's really all I can do is repeat to myself ad nauseum those words. This is something completely out of my control, and I have no power to avoid it or to even mitigate it if I wanted or tried. Drop it. And as soon as those emotions start kicking off in my reptilian brain, hopefully through repetition, I will cut them shorter and shorter and shorter until perhaps one day they no longer occur. Or I die first, in which case they absolutely will no longer occur. So it's win win. But in all seriousness, I would like to live my last days of my life not ticked off over something that was completely out of my control and something stupid like that. That is just something I don't want for myself. I can repeat that to myself as well. And that I think is what I'm going to do. That's my only solution at this point. Now, I also have another goal. I do plan to see my sane counselor again in the following week and to revisit on this and to see if either of us have had any more percolating thoughts or ideas that may deviate from where I'm at now. And if we do, I'll certainly share that. But right now, that's pretty much, I think, where I am at. It's sort of not unlike the rubber band around the wrist where you snap it on yourself when you start to think a bad thought. They used to do that. I don't know if they do. They still do that? I have no idea. Like in psychology or therapy and uh, CBT. I don't know if they do that or not, but I've heard of it being done where they wear a rubber band, the patient, that is. And once the thought they don't want starts to enter their mind, they snap themselves. And the pain of the snap, which is harmless, more or less, will also stop that erroneous thought process in its tracks. Maybe that's what I should do. I really don't want to wander around wearing a rubber band, but if that's a solution, then who cares? I'll run that by my counselor when I see her next and schedule or the schedule. The appointment is already set, so I've already taken that step further. And then I think my next baby step is to just try and stop those thoughts as quickly as possible with that cognitive knowledge. And, well, take it from there. We'll see what happens. At least the former emperor of the known world, the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, was upbeat about the idea or a similar idea. As I already said, he said, "You have the power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." So, hey, if a commander of the known world was upbeat about this sort of approach, who am I to debate that? But I'll see what the counselor says, and we shall take it from there. If any of you have other grand ideas and have a means to reach me, by all means, let me know. Don't be shy. But that will be my baby step forward now, at this point, moving forward. Well, my friends, with that all being said, I think I'm going to try to leave the podcast this week at least to that. Obviously, this has been something in the back of my mind that's been bothering me for a long time. And that's why I brought it to the surface too, to really try to do something about it. And I encourage all of you to do the same thing if you have similar things in your life that nag at you all the time. Take steps to change your lot in life so you don't have to endure something that is simply unendurable. Sometimes you have to. That's what the Emperor Hirohito said to the Japanese people at the end of the Second World War. The Japanese people had, up to that point, never even heard their emperor's voice before, but he made a broadcast over radio announcing Japan's unconditional surrender. And his words precisely were, "Japan will have to endure the unendurable." So sometimes you are faced with nothing more than that. But when it's something that is in your control, as this is, and what I mean is my thoughts with respect to the occurrence of events is in my control, I shouldn't have to suffer as Hirohito so eloquently prescribed in his address to the people in 1945. I don't want the last days of my life to be lousy. That's all I'm asking. Oh. So, with that all being said, I'm going to leave that to this week's podcast. I know it's a little short, but I'm pulling back a little bit again, trying to make sure I'm getting past these stupid technical problems I'm having still with this new platform, trying to learn it, get more confident with it. I mean, I can yammer for hours and hours. Just ask my father; he'll vouch for that. There's no problem there. The problem is in the technology and me trying to adapt to a whole new platform. This, on the fly as I produce content and do it without angrily defenestrating my laptop or something. Or even worse, myself. That too would solve the problem, I guess. Anyway, so I'm going to leave it there. And I thank you all immensely for at least giving me an ear to voice these thoughts as they come up. I use this podcast more than anything as a personal journal, as I'm sure you well know. And the benefit that I get out of it is tremendous for my own mental health and that introspection. But, if there was no one on the other end, if I was just talking to a brick, I don't think I would be as motivated to enter such introspection. So I thank you deeply for lending me your time to listen to my incessant rambling. I cannot thank you enough. I deeply appreciate your time. If you want to support the podcast sooner, you could always go to the homepage for the podcast, still on Spotify, and select support this podcast, or even better and easier yet, just go to patreon.com/ my dog will eat my face. And you can just drop a shekel in my cup and support it that way. Incidentally, also, if any of you listen to podcasts on Google, that has been taken down. Google has decided that we're not in the business of podcasts, but they gave creators who were there the opportunity to migrate everything they've made to YouTube. So, this podcast now is on YouTube. Yay! But there's no real animation or anything. It was just at this point, just a dump of a whole bunch of audio files on YouTube. Just to move it so it wasn't deleted. However, I did upload one little video of the dog in question who will eat my face maybe one day if I die of my sleep. But he is right now my best buddy and most adorable little guy, and we'll see if I take that YouTube channel further in the future here. So, you can find me there as well. Just search for my full name there, and you should be able to find it. Either find it via my name or the podcast name. And you should be able to see the most recently uploaded video, which is genuinely a, what do you even want to call it? A concoction of animated videos of my little guy who keeps me company all day long. And who can turn down a cute puppy video? Come on, you know you want to look at it. You know you do. But I'm going to leave it there. So I hope to talk to you again soon. And for now, auf Wiedersehen.